Well, welcome back to part 2. I've decided to do this restoration a little bit differently, well, a lot differently, from the way I have done previous restorations. Who wants to see the same thing over and over and over? You know, it gets a little old and dreary after a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the ground running on this baby, and instead of going through and cleaning everything and changing bad wires, and I mean, I'll of course change bad wires if they're, you know, the insulation's gone, things of that nature. But I don't think I'm going to run into that too much on this radio. I think most of the wires are going to be cloth covered, like on this shadow meter. That'd be kind of nice. I'm kind of hoping when I flip the chassis over, that's what I'll find is none of that rubber, you know, flaking wire, rubber insulated. So what I'm going to do is we're going to try to get this thing operational first. Then we'll go through and do all the, you know, restoration, the painting and all that nifty stuff. What do you say? I'm sure Martin, who sent me this radio, would like to see this playing as quickly as possible. So that's what we're going to do. Now, in his information he provided me, he said that there was a, let me see here, he said that there was a 5K7 in place of the rectifier tube right here. Now, I can't find anything on a 5K7, and neither could he. You know, now that's spooky when I hear that, because if they stuck if the people at the repair shop stuck the wrong tube in there, there's a possibility they could have fried out one of the windings on the transformer. That's not good. That's not good. So I have to get this chassis out right away. I have to get out of there and ohm out all the windings on this transformer first before I do anything. And if it checks out good, then we should be on our way. So that's the first thing to look at. Also, I don't think this is the export model. There was a different kind of transformer, power transformer, in the export model where you could take this thing, you unplug this thing right here. It had a plug, you unplug it, turn it around, and plug it back in for the various voltages for overseas. This one does not have that plug. Seems to me I had a Stuart Warner one time that was like that. You unplug the thing and you spin it around and you plug her back in, and it had the various voltages written around the outside with an indicator up here, a white dot that would point toward the different voltages, but I don't see that here. So this is probably the domestic model. Matter of fact, it even says here on the electrical specifications, it says, for 110 220 volt operation, a transformer part number 327642 is required. These transformers are built into export receivers only. The transformer has a plug and a socket mounted on the top of the power transformer adjacent to the rectifier tube. Place the plug with the arrow pointing toward the voltage being used. This is not one of those types of transformers as far as I can tell. Also, I found out what that metal thing was for. It was laying down here. It's the cover for the wiring on the audio output transformer. Okay? These wires here will go through a hole in the side, and then they'll hook up to the contacts underneath. First time I ever saw speaker wires with these little clips on them like that. These little connectors on there. That's kind of neat. That's kind of cool. Also, another problem I came into, as I noticed, you'll see that there's supposed, inside this shadow meter, there's supposed to be a little vane that moves left and right and blocks the light that's shining through that hole right there. That hole. Well, see that hole right there on this side of the cone? There's one on the opposite side as well, down in there. Well, there's no vane in there. Ugh! Now that's disturbing. So essentially, we have no shadow meter, even if the coil turns out to be good, and the light bulb's good, and the socket's good, and the wiring's good. Without that flipping vane in there that blocks that light, no shadow meter. So I'm going to get a hold of Ron Ramirez or somebody and see if they might have one of those little blades that fits up in those holes. Incidentally, when I did the first video, I said this was the older model. No, wrong. That was dead wrong. This is the newer model shadow meter. Actually, kind of looks a lot older, but it's not. This is the more modern version from the one that I have in my 1936 630B. Okay? Alright, so what we have to do now is get this chassis out of here. I'm going to unhook the screws, pull it out, look up underneath and see what we can do. I would love to get this baby playing and then finish up the rest of the restoration. That'd be neat to tune in a station on it after what, maybe 55, 60 years? Yeah. Well, the old chassis is out. These were the 4 screws that were holding it in. I think, now that I recall the emails I had, or the messages I had with Martin, I believe he said when the radio shop sent the radio back to his mother, the chassis wasn't even bolted back into the cabinet. And I think he's the one that put these screws in to hold it, to keep it from flopping around. And that was a good idea, especially during shipment. So we've got some nice bolts. Hopefully I can reuse them. And there's a piece of broken tube glass in there, a little bit of that. But other than that, I think the speaker appears to be no cracks on it that I can see. Nothing messed up. I'm not going to take it out yet. Let me turn it around here. It's just a little dirty is all. Let's turn it around. Before putting this thing in the shed for storage while I work on the chassis, I decided to go ahead and remove the dial frame, the glass, and the back part of the dial. I don't know what they call it, scutcheon, whatever. Anyway, the way this thing comes off is this thing sat in here like this, okay? And it was held on with those 4 small screws you see there. Screw holes, 1 hole there. You've got one there, one there, one there, and one there. And they're tiny little screws. I got them inside this blue piece of tape to hold them so they don't go anywhere. Anyway, that thing sat up in there like that. And then the glass, the dial glass that I've got taped together now, the dial glass fits inside of it. The dial glass does not go up inside the frame. It goes up inside this part, okay, like that. And then the way this thing is held together and the way you have to take it off, it's just a matter of unscrewing it. Once you get this thing screwed back in the holes right there and get it all situated up there where it's nice and secure, then you take this baby here. It's got 4 dog ears on it. See, you got 4 black dog ears. Those 4 dog ears go in these 4 slots here, and they just go in there. So all 4 line up, and then you put it in there, and then you just turn it to the right, and it locks it right in. That's all there is to it. And that's the way you take it off. You grab a hold of it like so when everything is in the cabinet. You grab a hold of it like so with your hand, you just turn it to the left, and it comes right off. Piece of cake. Little sliding dog ears is all it is. Let me see, one more thing. One more, oh yeah. On the back of this part right here. Let me put the glass over here where it doesn't get broken any further. And the screws, of course. On the back of this thing are these wire clips. Now they move back and forth. Now those wire clips are there to hold the shadow meter. Here's the shadow meter, okay? It's got the writing on top. It would go in this way. There's a little frame around this hole right here, little lip. And this thing fits over the top of the lip like so. Then you bring the wires up on each side to clip it in place. And that's what holds it in. Okay? Both sides. I got to get up a little higher on that other side there. And this side. Alright, I'll probably have to stretch them out a little bit. But that's how it's held onto the back of the frame. And that gives you your shadow meter on the front. Kind of neat, huh? Well, it doesn't look as bad as I had anticipated. It's got quite a bit of dust in there. And we've got a loose electrolytic here. And we've got one that's been changed out here. There's only about 8 or 9 wax. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I only see 8 wax capacitors in the bottom of the chassis. There's one way up in here also. That's going to be a real joy to get to. Look at that baby up in there. Ooh. I'll have to remove the band switch. I remember reading something on the internet about having to remove the band switch to get to that one. But I don't think that'll stop us from getting this radio operational. It looks to be in fairly good shape, you know, no bubbling on it or everything. You know, we'll give it a try. You know, if it needs to be replaced, I'll have to stop and do it. But fortunately, cloth covered wire, we do not have to change any of that. It all looks pretty good. These all have capacitors inside them, these Bakelite blocks. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, for joy, for joy. That's going to be the biggest chore of all. And I'm debating, rather than restuff these things, maybe I'll put the capacitors right on the outside this time to save time. And, you know, there's pro and con. Some people say, why put them all back in there? You know, why remove the old ones, put the new ones in there, and then later on, if you have a problem, you may have to take it back out. And it's easier for testing purposes and future replacement purposes to just go ahead and, you know, disconnect them from the existing lugs, take the wires loose, and then just go ahead and stuff the wires down inside the holes, and just put the new capacitors on top. You know, there's merit to both of those arguments. You know, replacing it to make it look original, or just put it on top to make it easier access, which I kind of like that this time. I've never done it. I've always restuffed them. I may go ahead and put them on the outside this time. Matter of fact, I know I am. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, the rest of these resistors, I don't know. They really look bad. You know, I don't like them, but I'll bet they're all functional. I'll bet they'll be good enough to get the radio going. So I'll tell you what now, this big old thing, that's a big old wire around heavy wattage there, about a 5 watt maybe even 10. That's a big sucker there. Anyway, we'll go ahead and blow out some of the dust. Maybe that'll make it look even better yet. So let me fire up the old air compressor here. Well, that's it. I just cleaned it top and bottom, gave it a good blowout. And one more thing that I need to bring up. This volume control and tone control was found laying inside the cabinet also by Martin, and he wrapped it up and I think put it in one of the plastic bags that he sent. It's a tone control and volume control. Unfortunately, the shaft of the volume control has been snapped off. Let me see if I can get that thing out of there. Come on, get out of there now. Yeah, there we go. You'll see that the shaft has been snapped right off of that thing. Right there on the end. It's supposed to be a longer shaft that the knob goes on. Anyway, this is the on-off switch portion. Right here. That's the switch down in there. And it engages with, the switch engages with that little tab you see sticking up there. And these 3 little or 4 bumps you see here give you the tone control. There's capacitors hooked to here, to these, to ground. And this thing here bumps from, you know, from one hole to the other as you turn it around. But it was broken, so what they did was they put, I'm not sure what they put in here. I'm fixing to unscrew that and take it out. We'll all see together what this is. It was loose. I figured, what the heck, why not go ahead and unscrew it and find out what it is. I don't think it works. I do know that there's a wire hanging here. Well, what they've done is put in another on-off switch. They have eliminated the tone control different capacitors that were connected here, and apparently they've hooked the tone control to just one side, so you get, I guess you get a tone control that just goes up and down. I'm not sure what they've done here. It's just a volume controlled tone control. I have no idea. Some sort of voltage control. And of course the switch. I don't know what we're going to do about this. I'm going to try to come up with a fix. A fix. I have some very good machinists where I work. I'm just wondering if one of them can drill that out. If they can drill it out, I can fix it. Well, that's about it. I think I'll go ahead. I've soaked your brain long enough with this thing. I'm not really 100% sure where I'm going to start except for the power transformer. We're going to check out that power transformer. The next video we'll check out the coil on the shadow meter, and I think I'll see if I can't blow up a schematic and show you how to check out the power transformer here and see if it's any good. If the power transformer is no good, we're dead in the water until further notice. So everybody keep their fingers crossed. I think if this thing checks out good, and the coils all appear to be good. I don't see anything burned. I don't see any wires broken. I don't see anything loose. You know, maybe I'll get this thing turned on and activated a lot sooner than I think. Until next time, this is John. Well, as usual, we can't quit yet. A couple of you mentioned the 6J5 tubes. I may have given a wrong impression when I said radio came back with the radio came back from the radio repair shop with the tubes out of the sockets. They had been removed, but most of them were still inside the radio. Some of them had been changed. The 6J5, for instance, is a glass tube, and that's what it calls for on the schematic. Unfortunately, they put 6J5 metal in there. And I don't know if it worked or not, but when you have a metal tube, pin 1 of the metal tube is supposed to be grounded. Pin 1. Well, this is a triode. And take, for instance, here's one of the sockets right here. And pin 1 on the glass tube is not used. It's an empty pin. So what they did was, since it calls for glass tubes, they used pin 1 right here as a terminal for something else. They did that on every single tube socket. I don't know. The only way I could get away with using these right here, it would be a little time consuming, would be to disconnect the wires that are there right now and hook them together. Well, maybe there's nothing I can do about it. I don't really know what that goes to, but as far as I can tell, I can just hook them together, remove them from the socket, and then ground pin 1 and just continue to march with the metal tubes. But I'm going to try to get to glass. That's what it calls for. For those of you who didn't know, whenever you have a metal tube like this, pin 1 has to be grounded because it's got a metal case over the top of it. It's metal. And I didn't know that when I first started out in radios, and I took my old thumb one day and I stuck it on top of a tube that looked like it was loose in the chassis, and I pressed down with my thumb like that to seat it in there. And holy mackerel, my thumb stayed numb for a week or two. It must have been a month. It stayed numb for years. It was so bad. Someone had disconnected the ground. You know, when you're in the learning stage, boy, you just got to be careful with everything. These things can kill you. Believe me. Fortunately, it didn't kill me that time, but it very well could have. Anyway, someone had disconnected the ground from pin 1, and when I stuck my thumb down on there, the voltage went right through my thumb. I'll tell you what, lesson learned, that'll never happen again. It better not, it hurt too bad. Okay, that's it. See you next time.